We are Heather and Paul Christie.
And for over 12 years, we've worked with executives and entrepreneurs to accelerate change in every aspect of their business.
Because we are in the fastest paced business environment that anyone has ever seen before.
So join us for the Evolve to Win show.
Today, we're talking about the top 4 reasons that people leave. Why do they quit? And I want to just throw the top 4 out right now and then have a conversation. So you've all heard that, that people don't leave jobs, they leave managers. Well, we know that ranks among the top 4s. People just don't like their boss. The second one is they feel a lack of empowerment. The third one is internal politics. And the fourth one is a lack of recognition. So I want you to be thinking back to the last time you left a job. Does it fall into any one of those 4 categories, or is it something altogether different? I can relate to all 4 of them. In fact, there were definitely bosses that I had that I didn't really care for. And in my case, I had a couple of bosses who were like full on manic, like a little bit crazy. They were screamers, and one was just hardcore. Like, you talk about work-life balance, there was none, and he didn't have any because he was a total workaholic. On his desk, he had a plaque that said, "Work harder, faster, longer." And that was kind of his mantra. So that meant that all of us had to do at least that. So I definitely had that going on. But what's really interesting, when you think about lack of recognition, I can definitely relate to that as well. That doesn't always relate to pay, by the way. A lot of times the recognition is so simple, but we just, as leaders, as managers, maybe are not as good as we could be at feeding verbal recognition, right? So I think that's one of the big ones. And look, there's so much that can be done about this, because when you think about it, losing a great employee is one of the most costly things that a business could ever go through.
Right. And so we're talking about the top 4 reasons why people leave their jobs. And 1 is they don't like their boss. 2 is the lack of empowerment. 3 is internal politics. And 4 is lack of recognition. So thinking about your past experiences in jobs, or maybe in your current situation in a job, is there a reason why, one of those 4 reasons why you're considering leaving, or have you left in the past? And so I think internal politics too it's a big deal, especially if you're not somebody that's more of an individual, and you're watching, people who really know how to play the game of politics within an organization and can move themselves up by doing that. That sometimes can be frustrating to watch on the outside, and that can be a challenge for somebody, and it may not be a good fit for them if they see that or they recognize it.
Yeah. Well, I think there's a simple solution for this. If you're in a management position, if you're in leadership in any way within your organization, is instead of just working in the business, work on the relationships. And, I feel like these days, everybody's flat out, right? There's so much to do and there's not enough time to do it. That is the theme that we hear from all of our clients, right? That there's so much to do. And we are human beings, not human doings. You've heard that saying before. But I think what happens is a lot of this speed, this like race that we're in to get things done means that we're putting aside the relationships. We're not making enough time for the relationships. And, different behavioral styles need different things. And there are some people that without relationship, you'll never actually get the best out of them. So I like to think about it this way. If your aim as a leader, if you really shifted your intention as a leader to be, I really want to get the best out of every one of my direct reports. If that were like the sole purpose, if you walked into work tomorrow or the rest of the day today and you said, just for today, I'm going to do whatever I can to get the best out of the people who work with and for me, how would you change the way that you're being? Because typically success is not just about what we do. It's more about who you're being when you do the things you do. And if you're going too fast, you're missing out on the opportunity to really work on those relationships. And here's something we know for sure is that if you have great relationships at work, you're way more likely to stay.
Got it. And so again, we're talking about the 4 reasons why people leave their jobs, and one being they don't like their boss, lack of empowerment, internal politics, and lack of recognition. So it's really, this is 2 sides. So we're talking, if somebody's an employee, these are some of the reasons why they would leave. But on the other side, if you are, leading an organization, or you have people that work under you, direct reports, how do you start to protect yourself from losing these really good people? And these are, if you know that these are the top 4 reasons why, what can you start doing? And you mentioned just starting to pour in a little bit more. Mm-hmm. What are some other things that somebody in a leadership role could do to protect themselves from this?
Okay, well, let's just look at the, one of the number 1 rated reason people leave is lack of recognition. Mm-hmm. So if you're in a leadership position, I can't tell you how many times it's happened where I've asked clients of mine, hey, talk to me a little bit about, are you getting great feedback from your boss? And so often the answer is no, I'm really not getting any feedback. This happens all the time. But if I went and talked to the boss is like, oh yeah, I tell them all the time how good they are. So I think there's a disconnect here. And I think that there are blind spots here. If you're in a position of leadership, again, this is something about being very intentional about looking for what your employee is doing right. Catch them doing something right and say it out loud. And don't just say so the big mistake is when you're leaving at the end of the day and right before you walk out, you have this habit of saying, hey, great job today. The more that you're saying a generalized kind of statement, the less impact that it has. So if that's given out, I had a boss who did that, and he was such a great boss. But I know that he had it sort of on a list somewhere that before he left every day, he would pop his head in and say, hey, Heather, great job today. Yeah. Thank you. And I certainly appreciated his gratitude, but he never really drilled down and got specific on, can you point something out, or are those just words? So here's my challenge for each of you today. And I don't care whether you're in a management position or just in life, you can do this. I want you to catch somebody doing something right and take a moment, pause everything that's happening and just say, hey, can I talk to you for a second? Of course, they're going to get scared at first. What do you want to talk? And just say, I just really want to acknowledge you for, and then fill in the blank, right? So just say something that's completely out of the ordinary. So one of the things that I did just last week randomly that shows me that I'm probably not doing this enough is I acknowledged you for putting some pieces in place on our financial plan that, we needed to wrap up, and you got it done. And so I sort of did something unique and special to acknowledge you. And Paul told me a couple of different times how much it meant to him for me to, surprise him with that acknowledgement. So that was an indicator that I don't do it enough. So, when you do this, when you actually stop someone and tell them where they're doing a great job and tell them how much you appreciate them, just watch their reaction. If they're shocked and stunned and they mention it to you a couple of times, maybe you're like me and you could do that a little bit more.
So here's another way. This you would have to really make sure that you're ready to find out the results. But one of the quickest ways to do that is do a anonymous survey. So you can use anything like Survey Hero or Survey Monkey or any type of online survey thing, and put it out where they do not have, if you're leading people and you want to put it out there, ask them the specific questions, about, what could be improved, on a star rating, 1 to 10, how do they feel about the organization? How do they feel about recognition, about the politics within the organization? Do they feel empowered? And do they like their boss? Would they rate you on that? Imagine if you got that information, if you had 10, 15, 20 direct reports and you got anonymous feedback, so you could figure out immediately what you need to work on. I mean, I would highly recommend that for somebody.
Oh, I strongly recommend it too. And I know most people won't do it because they'd be scared to death of seeing what those results are. It is scary. It really is scary to ask for feedback. And yet, if you go in with the spirit of whatever comes back, I'm okay with. Here's something that I believe about feedback is that if I got feedback that I really didn't like, I take it as true for the person who shared it, versus it just being the hardcore truth. And here's what I mean by that. So sometimes, I have an intention of always acknowledging people, right? That's my intention. If I were to hear back that I'm not very good at acknowledging people, I would accept that as true for the person who shared it. Does that make sense?
Right.
And so what does that mean? Well, different people need different levels of acknowledgement, and they need to be acknowledged in different ways. So just really getting an understanding for how people are feeling. If you got feedback that people around you who worked with and for you did not think that you shared enough positive acknowledgement, wouldn't you want to know that? Because there's something you can do about that, and you can instantly shift a relationship, right?
Well, and it also shows the people that you're leading, they know that you are making an effort, that your opinion actually matters to them.
Yeah.
And at the end, hopefully when they get those results, they can be shared with the team. And then what's the action plan that the leader's going to take to do that? I mean, that's real proactive leadership.
Yeah, I like it. All right. So the 4 questions that we're suggesting that you ask are, number 1, do you feel, I would do a star rating here. How do you feel your level of recognition is right now? Like, how do you feel about the level of recognition you're receiving?
Right.
That's said a little bit better. And then maybe give a 5-star rating. 5 is it's awesome, it's perfect, it's excellent. 1 is what recognition? I don't get any, right? And just see how you average. Do you have some 5s? Do you have some 1s and 2s? Because that's also going to tell you that it may appear to some people that you're playing favorites. Some people are getting all the recognition and others are not. So that's question number 1. How do you feel about the recognition you're currently receiving? Number 2, I would ask a question about internal politics. You might do a fill in the blank with the internal politics so you can actually hear a little bit of what people see as being internal politics, because quite frankly, that that category is like, it's huge. It could be a lot of different things, a lot of different perceptions. Right. Number 3, do you feel empowered? And maybe a star rating there. 5 being, yes, I feel fully empowered in my job to make decisions and take actions. And 1 being, what does that word mean? Because you micromanage me and you make all my decisions for me.
Right. And we're talking about the top four reasons why people leave their jobs. And one of the recommendations that we made as a leader, creating a survey to survey your team and ask them these 4 questions in a star rating. You could do however you want to do it, a 1 through 10 or a 1 through 5 star rating, and have them just submit that. And the main thing is that it's anonymous so that you get real, true feedback from them.
And then the last question, I'm sorry that I didn't finish up there, was, rate your relationship with your boss. Right. So, do you really know if you are leading someone, whether or not they actually like you? Because that's a major, major reason why people will stay or people will leave.
So imagine if you're working for somebody right now, you may be, and if this person, your boss, actually submitted this survey to you that anonymously, where you could put it in and feel safe, that if you gave true feedback that anything wouldn't be done, based on your feedback. And then once all that information was sent back and the survey was complete, that they actually shared that with the team. And then they created their own action plan and shared that with the team, saying, this is what I'm going to do based on the results that I received.
And I think what's really important about doing any kind of survey like this is the positioning up front. So as Paul said, really help people to know that this survey is being done for the purpose of me requesting feedback. I'm purposely doing it anonymously because I want you to be wide open. I want you to share your real thoughts and feelings because I want to do something with the responses. I'd like to do something about it. So I'm going to share these responses with all of you. And you might even say your responses are completely anonymous, so we won't know who said what. But I am going to share the results. So if you don't want any personal identifiable information in your response, don't put it in there because I will share your results. And then let them know what you're going to do. So again, asking for feedback seems really, really scary, but I promise you, if you were to get feedback and maybe you could find a blind spot, that's always what we're looking for, right? Because the reason we don't ask for feedback is if we think we're probably doing all right in these areas. And there's a good chance that on maybe one of these 4 questions that you ask, that you might get some feedback that you don't initially like. But remember, just take that feedback as true for the person who shared it with you. And that's their perception, but perception's reality for them. So if that's their truth, it means that you've got some opportunity. What's the real opportunity on the outside of this, the big picture of this conversation? The real opportunity is retaining those great employees. And, if you need a little bit of incentive to do this exercise that we're talking about, I would ask you the question, what would happen if you lost your best employee tomorrow? Right? Because that's kind of like the fear that should, rise within you. You should say, okay, I might do this exercise.
Yeah. Would you rather it be a proactive leadership, like something that can retain good employees proactively, or the worst is when you have to react and you're not expecting that person to leave? Actually, we just had a client of ours that had a great client, or a great executive assistant that just, they had no clue. They just she sent in her resignation. It was over. Like
the old, yeah. I didn't see that one coming.
Yeah.
And once it happened and they really took time to reflect, he said, I should have seen it coming.
Right.
So don't get stuck like that. Please don't get surprised. There's a lot that can be done to retain employees with some really simple strategies. Again, what I said earlier was don't just work in the job, work on the relationships. Mm-hmm. Because when you have a great relationship with those around you, well, first of all, it's a lot more fun, but you're much more likely to retain that group of people, and you're much more likely to have great influence to help get the best out of them and get the work done that you need to get done.
So again, the top 4 reasons why people leave their jobs. 1 is they don't like their boss, the lack of empowerment, internal politics, and lack of recognition. And we recommended that you create a survey, an anonymous survey for your team, and ask them those 4 questions in a star rating and get that feedback. Share it with your team once you have received and collected all the data, and then create an action plan on how you're going to shore up those low star point areas that you asked them about. So,
and Paul mentioned that there's a couple different options for surveying. SurveyMonkey is a very well-known option, and I don't know if they have a free version.
We use Survey Hero now.
Yeah, I want you to tell them about Survey Hero, because this.
Well, it's free. It's free, and
we love free.
Yeah, and I mean, if you're not doing tons of surveys, then it's the best thing to do is to use that one, just because otherwise it's like $25, $30 a month, and if you're not doing a whole bunch of surveys, then there's really no point in doing it.
So go to surveyhero.com, and you'll find that free survey tool. And again, just make sure that your team knows that their responses are completely anonymous. And hope you enjoyed our session for today. Maybe it made you think a little bit about some feedback that you might want to go after and get from your team. And or if there's someone else who needs to hear this, please share it with them. If you haven't connected with us yet, please go to heatherchristie.com and sign up for our leadership list, or go over to our YouTube channel. All of these videos are shared on the YouTube channel, along with a lot more.